Hello, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. Just going to wait a few seconds here. Just got back from Tyler. Just got back from work, replenishing the pantry stock, staying busy, staying vigilant. Excellent. That is what I think we all should be doing right about now. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Just give me a little shout out there in the chat to make sure that everything is working. Got to get my IT people on here. Hello, Melissa. Hello, Mid-State Prepper. Hey, Matt. Volume is good, Justin. Thank you, Justin. Appreciate that. Old Spice. Hey, MR. Hope all is well with you as well, Old Spice. It's just been an insane week, Dave Carlisle. How you doing? It's been an insane week. I wanted to do just this little live stream and kind of chat with you guys about, somebody posted that in one of my subscribers posted that in my chat for my video today saying about perpetual preparedness. And that is an excellent term to describe, I think, where we all should be, because you never can tell when a week like this comes along. Even though in my neighborhood things have been kind of mellow, everybody's concentrating basically on the harvest. But you look around the globe, the French government collapsed. So there's going to be some kind of election, however they run their parliamentary thing over there. Hey there, Patriot Preacher. How's everything going for you today? You had the people in Nepal burn their parliament down. There was a big blackout in Berlin, Germany, right about the same time that those drones came in from Russia, Ukraine, whatever, into Poland, which is a NATO country, which, the whole Article 5 thing. I think pretty much everybody in the prepper sphere knows what Article 5 of NATO is. And then you had, I don't even want to really say it, but you had that terrible event that took place yesterday that has massive political ramifications. So that's if those aren't all good enough reasons to kind of make sure that you got your stuff squared away and you could, hunker down if something bad happens. I don't know what else is going to get people on board. Barbara, how you doing? Born Gearhead, how you doing? G Garden, Kentucky, how are you doing there, buddy? Mosaic, good to see you. How's everything down there in the tropics? Are you guys in the wet season or the dry season right now in the tropics? I always get that confused. You know, and with watching, what took place yesterday and watching, kind of all the ramifications and people saying their spiel on social media, I wanted to make this point specifically for this video here. When people are fanning the flames on social media, you have to take a step back and say, who is actually fanning these flames? Because, you never really know with social media who you're actually talking to. And, that's why I try to always be, no AI, just straight off the top of my head. I don't have a script or anything to try to prove that I'm just an actual person. But the way things are nowadays, you really have to keep an eye on, who is pushing what agenda? Why are they fanning the flames? Do they want to, cause some type of internal strife and conflict? Because with social media, you never really know who's doing the talking. You have to take them at their word, and we know how people are with that. So I just wanted to kind of mention that. I had somebody tell me a long time ago, when you read something on social media and it makes you mad, you need to take a step back from that and think, well, who wants me to be mad about this particular post? So I guess that's one way to look at it. It's cough and cold season. Yes, everybody has been complaining off-grid living. Everybody's been complaining up here about their sinuses and, all the problems that go along with the weather changes. Hey, Dangerous Freedom. Mother Refugee is in here making sure I'm on the straight and narrow. Hey, MR, this is tough on the younger generation. And I work with several younger guys, and they said that they're like in shock. They couldn't believe, I'd be lying to you if I told you I really knew much about this guy before yesterday. But the younger crowd that is in like their 20s and younger, pretty much everybody knew this guy. So, for whether they agreed with him or not, everybody agreed. Everybody, I'd say up to 27 years old, knew who this guy was and kind of actively followed him one way or another, whether they agreed with him or not. Melissa, how's the weather down in the Southwest? Sweet Irene Mudboggin, how you doing? Does Trump go ape like El Salvador prisons could fill up quick? I don't know. When people talk about martial law and that kind of stuff, I think we've been slowly heading toward that for a long time. And I think that, just going back to 2020, look how basically there was such an overreaction from the authorities. I could see how that could spill over, and it could spill over in a really bad way where they couldn't even wrap their hands around it. I mean, I could see that happening. And I wanted to mention this too, now that I'm thinking about it. I follow people in the prepper sphere from all over. I had some people in my comments today saying that there's lots of they're expecting lots of problems because of this on university campuses, and I can see that just from the one university campus in the last month or so that I've been on here in Michigan. I could see where there could be some issues. There was nothing going on that particular day, and there was still signs and quasi protests and all that other stuff going on. So I could see that um, happening well too. I know several people in Europe that I talk to on a pretty frequent basis, and they ask me, "Hey, was this a Franz Ferdinand moment?" Well, I don't think it's quite that bad. I think it has the potential to be, you know, definitely cause some problems. And then for a while already, some other friends of mine online that I talk to pretty frequently, they've mentioned too where as time goes on, people in the spotlight, authority figures, business, important business people, rich people, all this kind of stuff. There's going to become a time when they're going to be afraid to go in public, and I can see where that could start taking place now after this, because look what's taken place here just recently. You had attempts on the president. You had that CEO in New York, and now you've had this, and that's just all in a condensed, I don't know, maybe a year, a little over a year period of time. You had these multiple events, and that kind of goes in line with what they said, that there's going to come a time when people in authority, business moguls, all these activists, people in the media, they're going to be afraid to show their face in public because of what's been going on. Matt, see, this is what they want. Take out a big voice on campuses, won't allow people to debate their opinions now. And really with the things that have taken place, and like I said, I didn't really know anything about this kid until yesterday, really. The security, why, and we were discussing this at work today. I was discussing this with those younger fellows that I was talking to you about. Why didn't they have some type of bulletproof thing in front of him? I mean, where was the security for something like this? That's multiple times now there's been something like this that take place at this public venue, and it just makes me wonder why isn't there some type of better security in this? And then some people were saying too that it was a professional job. Well, I think it was Mr. Guns and Gear posted a picture of supposedly the thing that they recovered on that, and I mean, I could drink 6 beers and I could put a scope on that rifle better than that. So if there's ever been a time to prep, this is the time. I mean, because you just don't know what's around the corner. And I can see where foreign actors can take these type of events and they can use them to stir up problems here. Some type of cyber attack wouldn't surprise me one bit in the next week. And then one side can blame the other, and it can cause more division, more strife, and it just kind of builds all this up. And so many teachers got fired today over their comments. People are just they're losing their humanity to a certain extent. How whatever happened to humans, just being people, and this animosity is just tearing that's just tearing people apart. This I just I went to a Christian school. I went through all of that, and we were just taught to be decent to one another, and that's just kind of out in the open right now. His personal security was personal security. They were trained for close violence. I watched the vid. A former sniper said 200 yards, hit a neck, missed a headshot, and that sounds like basically what happened from what I've seen, but you can never tell exactly, because when they do investigations and stuff like that, they put out false evidence too to the media just to see if people are copycat, and there you got kooks that call in, whatever, because I've talked to different law enforcement here in my town. I got a general idea how they go about some of that stuff. Dang, almost missed this one, Coney. Well, I'm glad you're here. Glad you're here. Same here, Patriot. That rifle was, yeah, I don't know. I spent the last two Dims, Golian Dims. I spent the last 2 days painting the pantry, redoing the inside out, getting ready for restock in case of event of SHTF. I think that's a great idea. Hey, Sub Dog, how you doing? Um, this is a good time to, and it's the right time of year anyway. This is a good time to look over your pantry. Like what that commenter said today about perpetual preparedness. That's a good rule to live by, because you just never know. And then, as a typical rule, SHTF is going to happen at the most inconvenient possible time. It's going to happen in the middle of the night. It's going to happen when people are sick. It's going to happen during a snowstorm. It's going to happen during a holiday, maybe all of them put together. And then you get into what I've said before about the compounding SHTFs. You got those compounding SHTFs that where one thing leads into another, just like, cyber attack shuts down the power. Then you have all the problems that go along with shutting down the power. And I think from this point forward, anybody that has a interest in preparedness and prepping needs to basically be on the lookout at any given time, because anything is really possible, and especially when they're out in public places. Any public place nowadays has the ability to, cause problems. And I've been following several different local things on here, and that's the one thing that I do like Facebook about. There are different, you can follow police departments, local police departments, stuff like village police departments, city police departments, county sheriffs, county dispatches. Sometimes will have Facebooks. There's another guy here that's local, that's doing kind of the local big towns, and they put out basically what's going on in your neighborhood. To me, that is solid gold intel right there for letting me know what's going on in my area, because you know what, the big things are big things. They're out there, they're going to happen, they're going to affect us one way or another. But that local stuff, the local stuff with the crime, if there's some type of civil unrest that's going on, these places are going to be at the tip of the spear to get that information out, to let people know what's going on. And if that's the only reason you got Facebook, that's still a pretty darn good reason to have it. And I'm not a huge Facebook fan, but I exploit the information that I can get off Facebook from those sort of sources, so I can stay in tune to my neighborhood. Subdog, as a non-American, I see what is happening, and it looks like a spark here. Our prayers are with it. Charlie Kirk and his family out, and the amazing neighbors in the USA. Well, we appreciate that, Subdog. I just wish humanity could all be just a little bit closer, and treat each other like human beings. How you would want your brother, your spouse, your children, your grandparents, aunts and uncles, how you would want to be treated. Kind of just I try to judge everybody on an individual basis and treat them how they treated me. Hey, MR, I just finished the second first aid kit for the box. I used a couple of large file plastic bags with handles. Feel much better that those are the car. Glad you walked us through. Hey, no problem. That's why I'm here. That's why I do this stuff. I am planning sort of a redo of my gear that I carry in my vehicle. I'm going to kind of divide that up because I used to have a job 20, 30 miles away from home, and now I'm literally a mile away from home. So the needs for some of that gear has changed quite a bit in the last year and a half, 2 years. And I'm going to do an update on a kind of the stuff I'm carrying now and how I'm dividing that stuff kind of from the wilderness stuff to more of being in town more. Hey, MR, filled up my gas tank, even though it was three-fourths of a tank. Awesome. I just filled mine up too. I had just dropped below full, so I stopped in because I don't use as much gas anymore. I'm only going a mile. Lady Luger went to the Salvation Army today and got a non-electric fondue set. Just another prepping tool. You know what? There's nothing wrong with a good fondue. I've done fondue where we've done, you make the fondue cheese and then you invite all your prepping buddies over and have a prepping fondue party. That's actually pretty fun. I can highly recommend all of that. Anonymous Prepper Channel. Hey, Modern, how's it going, sir? How are you doing today? The old Anonymous. Love the Anonymouses. Everybody's go. I don't have the mask though, so I probably never will. Sweet Irene Mudbog, and I had to uninstall Facebook. Too much drama a couple of days ago. You know what? I go through and I do purges on social media. I do it on YouTube channels and I do it on Facebook and groups and that kind of stuff. I will go through and I'll say, you know what? I don't like the BS on this. I haven't gotten any quality information out of these places in a long time. They're gone. And I do it about every 6 months or so. I'll just get in that mood. I'll have a cup of coffee. It'll be a slow day. I'll have a slow minute. I'll be sitting there. So you know what? I'm going through and I'm purging everything. And you'll be surprised because that will reset that algorithm and you'll start to be shown an entire different set of information. Sounds like backyard bow wow is setting off the alarm upstairs. Fondue, awesome. Yep. I tell you what, that's a good way to get people together. It's kind of like when you're snowed in, it's the equivalent of a barbecue, but it's when everybody's snowed in, you have a fondue party. Anonymous Prepper, haha, I had many masks. I say, yeah, I thought about the mask thing when I first started this, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It just wasn't me. I guess I don't want to relate to people. There's certain things that you can't, when you're talking to people, you can't show your emotion when you're wearing a mask, and that's just me. I know I got a couple of real good friends, real good prepper friends, especially on YouTube, that they keep their identity closed up, and I can understand why. Got you thinking of a fondue. I have a Facebook just to look on the marketplace, and that's thing too. If you're needing gear or whatever, marketplace has got a lot of stuff. And I look on there, you like chainsaws and generators or stuff. There's always something for sale on there. As long as the people you're buying them from are straightforward and legit. But in the next week to 10 days, especially, I'm glad I don't really have anything major going on that I have to get out of my local area. If I had to go like 2 states over for something right now, I'd probably be a little bit on the nervous side. I would really look at my gear, what I would be taking. I'd be looking at the routes. I'd be studying stuff. I'd be studying where we're going, the egress points out of all those things. I'd be looking at if we were going to like a doctor's appointment or we were going to meet people or something. I would be looking at all those things individually, and I'd be making a plan up of what I would basically be doing in those situations. Just reworked my Jeep TJ for the fall season, hunting season. Yeah, hunting. We have a youth hunt that's coming up this weekend that is for deer. Oh gosh, the 15th of September is the start of small game here in Michigan, which is, your rabbits and your squirrels, although nobody really hunts rabbits now. That's a winter thing. But squirrel hunting is the big thing that starts on the 15th of September. And then there's disabled veterans hunts. There's some other hunts that take place before bow hunting starts on the 1st of October. I don't know if I'm going to bow hunt much this year, but I'll probably at least sit out gun hunting one time. I take my muzzle loader and 3 shots. Hey there, Hawk. How you doing? Dangerous freedom. I had to run to the airport earlier, threw some extra gear, and that is you really got to look at anything that's not around town. You really got to look at, hey, where am I going? What problems I could have, so you can come up with solutions to that stuff. Very much. So has anybody noticed in the last 24 hours anything kind of different in your area as far as, how people have been reacted to these situations that have been going on this week? I've noticed for me personally, I've noticed there's been a lot more discussion with this than there has been with, other things that have taken place. I'm kind of into that stuff, so I knew about the French government and the thing in Nepal and the drones coming in and the bombing in the Middle East. I knew about all that stuff, but today was different. Today, people were talking more about basically the things that have been going on, and Old Spice been canning for weeks now. Wrapped it up today. There is more in the garden. Will freeze now. Yeah, our garden is pretty well the way it needs to be at this particular point. I haven't noticed much here in the desert, but all I knew about was yesterday. Yeah. Uh, I know they're bringing in up here. We were talking about that there at work today. They're bringing in migrant workers to start working some of the stuff with the harvests, and they were discussing, how they house those folks nowadays when they bring them in, and that was another discussion. There were people coming in and out of the shop today that were getting stuff to kind of prep all that stuff. So that's another thing. Bear Creek girl, I'm in rural Tennessee. People around here are asleep. Most people I talked to today didn't even know who Charlie. And that's the age thing again. I work with some younger guys, so I work with younger guys. I'm a middle-aged guy, and people older than me come into our place and buy stuff. So I got kind of a big swath of people that I talk to in a day, and and then of course we have the traveling crowd. We have people that come up here because where we are up here. For me, I don't consider this up north at all, but from people downstate in Michigan that come up this way, this is up north to them. So then I get the money crowd and the vacationing cottage crowd. I get that comes in too. So I really do talk to a large group of people. Yeah, modern anonymous prepper channel. Yeah, modern. Even my girlfriend randomly was talking about things today, and she's in a prepper, but now wants me to build her a go bag. And you know what? A go bag can be just simple. It can be, a little bit of cash, couple bottles of water, so pair of socks, some extra clothing that's in there, a spare charger, a spare charging pack, a good quality flashlight or headlamp. It doesn't have to be much. It doesn't have to be much, but those things in the right situation can make a day and night difference for the situation that you're in. Let's see here. Do sub put off canning this year. Sub dog of the move new homestead still lots to do. Cold smoke. Oh, that's a good one to talk about. Sub dog, cold smoke, hot smoke, and cold smoke. There's two different ways to preserve meat. There's a hot smoke and there's a cold smoke. Cold smoke stuff like ham, bacon, sometimes like a smoked turkey. Those are typically for us are cold smokes. And what a cold smoke is you have a low temperature and you have a lot of smoke and you leave it for a long period of time. Now the meat isn't cooked, it's just smoked and preserved. So like when you have that ham, you could take a slice of ham off that and you can't just eat that because it hasn't been cooked. You have to fry that or bake it in the oven, and that's what a cold smoke is. A hot smoke actually not only smokes and flavors the meat, but it also cooks it. When I'm thinking of that, I'm thinking stuff like fish will typically be hot smoked because you want that fish to be cooked as well as smoked. And that gets into the whole kind of the ins and outs of the smoking thing. So that is some of the things that you gotta kind of keep in mind when you're getting into the smoking thing. But cold smoke really that was the main way that the old timers around here when they put meat up in um a smokehouse, that was a cold smoke. They had the fire, usually outside of the building, and they had a small tunnel or tube that would go into the smokehouse. So your heat source would be over here, the smoke would go through that tube, and then it would fill the smokehouse up. So you had just the smoke, but you wouldn't have the heat. And then that was a typical cold smoke and stuff for ham, sausage, bacon, that stuff. Then that would hang in there. And because it was smoked, it was preserved, but it still had to be cooked when you went out, when you wanted bacon for for breakfast or whatever, you went out and you took, a quarter, half a slab of bacon, you brought that in, cut the rind off of it, and then sliced it up. Oh, let's see here. Hawkmeyer, do I have a vid or advice on canning deer meat? I don't have a deer meat canning video, but I do have a beef canning video. And any beef canning recipe you can use for venison. And I did one here not too long ago, maybe a year ago. I did a beef canning recipe, and that basically, in a nutshell, what it is: I browned the meat. Then I took that meat and I packed it in the jars, and then I went ahead and I pressure canned it. And that's more or less how you would do venison. Mosaic, I'm 55, watch multiple Kirk videos, don't agree with everything, but it's crazy how intolerant people can be. Most people in Puerto Rico don't know where he is. And, that's kind of like me. I kind of heard the name a couple of times, but I didn't really know because that's not my generation. But it's amazing how much you can learn about somebody when something tragic happens in a hurry. MRI had a fire blanket, the first aid bags. If you Fire blankets are something good to have in the house too, especially if you're doing a lot of cooking or whatnot. I've had different people that were on the fire department and stuff tell me that a fire blanket is something really good to keep on hand as well. Chuck, money in society will crumble. You know what? I can see where society is crumbling right now. Things are not what they were even, 10 years ago. We do deer and beef, Old Spice. Yeah, old deer and beef are very similar in their preservation methods. Even if you're making like summer sausage, stuff like that, jerky, the recipes for beef you could use for venison. They're like almost identical. Sometimes some people, because venison is a lot drier than beef, they will grind some pork or even some beef into when they're making sausage, so there's a little bit of fat in it, so the venison doesn't dry out. But other than that, more or less, the recipes are universal. Jim Survival, how you doing? Captain Bart, hi from Central Illinois. How's the old harvest going down there? Central Illinois has a lot of they have a lot of agriculture in there from where I went through. Corn especially, I remember when we went through. Fire extinguishers. That's something everybody should have, multiple fire extinguishers. I got a fire extinguisher beside the power box. I got a fire extinguisher out in the garage beside the wood stove. I have another one out in the garage beside the grill. I have one in the kitchen, and I have another one beside my bed where I sleep. Because if something happens, I jump up in the middle of the night and I smell smoke, I'm going to grab that fire extinguisher and go, find out what's going on with that. Things are drying up, still at least 2 more weeks before begin cutting. I've seen pretty much everything going on here. I've seen a few beans harvested. I've seen silage being cut. They're pulling sugar beets, but the sugar beets aren't very good this year at all. I'm not sure. And that's a big industry around here. So I'm sure that's going to affect people later in the winter and stuff when the sugar beet processing season kind of comes to an end. And I've seen alfalfa being cut as well. Alfalfa is typically good in dry spells like this. Mr. Wren, how are you doing? Caught me on the live stream. Awesome. Fire blankets are less messy. Yeah, and I'm trying to think. Did I see fire blankets at a Harbor Freight once? And then there was another local hardware. It was a local hardware. It wasn't a chain one at all. They had fire blankets in once, and I can't really remember what the price was, but it was a couple of years ago. Start of a drought here in southern Indiana. Oh, it's crazy dry here. We did have one good rain. I bet I don't have an off-grid fire extinguisher. I don't really. Other than an actual sprinkle can full of water, but I do have a little stored water here. But yeah, fire extinguishers, and then too, the ABC thing. I try to always have the fire extinguishers that cover everything, because you just you never know what kind of fire you're going to deal with, whether it's something in the kitchen or it's some type of electrical problem. It's good to have all that stuff. Miss Mary, how are you? Thanks for being here. Very dry in upstate New York. Yeah, it's just been this whole part of the country has just been dry. We haven't gotten a lot of rain. Just got done going through my first aid kits. Awesome. Awesome, Brad. Have you ever taken game with the recurve hanging behind me? That guy right there? Yes, actually, I have. Back when I was a lot younger, I have shot a couple of squirrels with that, believe it or not. And I want to say I shot at a pheasant once and I missed it. And I don't remember ever shooting any rabbits with it, but I've shot a lot of fish with that bow. I shot a lot of sucker in the spring with that. And a lot of people will put a reel on their bow when they're shooting for fish and then reel it in. I always thought that was a gigantic pain. So I would just take regular arrows, because usually when you're bow fishing, where I would do it, it would be in creeks and stuff. So, the water's only like this deep where it's in. So a lot of times the arrow would just stick the fish to the bank, and I would just, wear shorts and like water shoes, and I would jump in and flip the fish up on the shore with the arrow. And I lost a few arrows like that, but I never had that. My aim was always better because I didn't have that drag on the reel where the string went out. So yeah, I'd have to say fish was the thing that I took the most with that, and that's basically why I keep it around. I actually got I don't know if you guys can see. I probably can't see them because of the light, but I actually got some broadhead arrows right up in there, some cedar ones with good fletching on them. So if I would ever have to use that for something bigger, I could use it for something bigger as well. Uh, Dangerous freedom. Class D fire extinguishers are a total loss. Once the magnesium starts burning in a vehicle, there isn't any. Yeah, magnesium will burn white hot. Those little square, not square, rectangular little fire starters. That's actually what they are. They have a small ferro rod on them, and the rest of them is magnesium. And the point is, you take your knife and you scrape the magnesium shavings into a pile. That you take the ferro rod, you ignite that, and it's a white hot flame. So even if it's like wet wood or whatever, it'll dry that out so it can ignite. So that's basically what those are. But yeah, magnesium is crazy hot. August was the driest month ever here in lower northeast Ohio. I believe it. I believe it because I can see it here. Like usually the horseradish I got out in my garden in my backyard, it's got big leaves, and I cut it back a couple times this year, and it's just all wilting because there just isn't enough moisture in the ground right now. Oh. I have terrible problems with my knees. My knees just do not cooperate with me. I would love to do some hiking and stuff lately, but that's kind of, I said in that one video I went over and I got discs on my medical stuff, and it basically was for my knees. I got to have my knees looked after. It's a pretty common problem for men in their 50s, like I am. Uh, but yeah, medical records too. There has been in the last year, there's been three different instances in the medical. There's several different medical. I don't know. I don't really want to say companies, but conglomerates or whatever in Michigan. There is, Covenant is a big one. That is the one that's out of Saginaw. There's Genesis, which is sort of down Flint way, and then there is the Henry Ford. That's more down Detroit way. You get up in northern Michigan, there's one on the northern part of Lower Peninsula. It's called Munson, and then in the Upper Peninsula there is a Marquette. And these big medical systems are always under cyber attack, always. And I believe it was Henry Ford was one, and Ascension was the other one. They basically locked the hospital out of all the diagnostic stuff. So when doctors would go in, whatever, on the computer to look at your CAT scan or your MRI, they couldn't access it. It was locked out. It was basically held for ransom. Well, now, if you have something like my knees, where it's not really life threatening, it's just a pain in the in the legs basically. But now you got somebody that has like a brain aneurysm, or you have to have somebody that has blood clots, or somebody that needs to have a stent put in their heart. Those are life threatening conditions, and that's what they were doing. They were holding basically people who had medical problems. They were holding their information hostage to get the medical places to pay them whatever Bitcoin or whatever the shit is. So that's kind of how that was, and that has happened multiple times. So I have gotten to the point where if there's anything going on and there's any type of diagnostic stuff that's run for me and my family, I want copies of that stuff, because who knows, what if they hit the wrong button one day and they delete all that stuff, say, you know what, you didn't give us enough Bitcoin, we're gonna, and all that stuff is gone. How is that backed up? That's something you don't hear from your doctor. You go to your doctor, hey, how do you back up my medical records? How do you back that up? You store that off site? Is that on a server somewhere? Is it on the cloud? Where is that? Because that's shit they don't talk about. So we had a crazy rain in southern Indiana all year until early August. Now nothing. Hey, Washburn Billy, how are you doing? You would never guess how much magnesium. And yeah, magnesium, there's a lot of magnesium out there in a lot of different things. Washborn Billy is one of my longtime subscribers. He lives up north here in Michigan, and he always is commenting back and forth on. And I do believe he's invited me fishing one of these days. When I'm up there, I'm going to have to go fishing with him. Never really thought about that as a reason to ask for them. I bet you know what I've thought about that already. And then too, you change doctors, so now you might be in two different medical systems. So then you don't know what's carried over, what isn't carried over. It's something that has been really on my mind with. And then too, what was the other one that happened last? I want to say it was last fall. It was pharmacy. They locked all the pharmacies out of the insurance information. So then if you were on a drug that was 150, they had no way to access the insurance information. This is the kind of thing that these malicious actors are constantly, looking to exploit these problems. And all it does is hurt average people. You think the rich people care? No, they don't care about that stuff. It's us. It's the lower class, the lower middle class, the middle class people that always take the brunt of all this, BS that goes on. Oh yeah, it's always good to exercise. And for me, yeah, I'm a little bit overweight, and my weight fluctuates from the time of year too. And that's what's bad for me, because I was always a massive walker. The last 3 years, especially, I would walk a couple of miles every night. But now that my knees fried, it's I can't walk like I used to, and it drives me nuts. And that's another reason why I'm trying to get some stuff fixed and whatever. But yeah, I mean, when you're used to walking and you're being active, now all of a sudden you're kind of sidelined. You come home from work and you're dragging your leg behind you, because I mean, that for somebody that's constantly active and being out, it sucks. It sucks big time. Uh, and I find walking with a pack too, Subdog. Put 10 pounds in a backpack and walk around. You'll be surprised if you do 3 miles, and then if you kick it up after you've done a mile for a week, do 3 miles. After a week or two of 3 miles, do 5. Or like one of the things that I do is I'll have mother refugee take me out and drop me off somewhere, and I'll walk back home. And two, just a little bit of weight in a pack will make a big difference. Plus, you'll start to learn your pack. You'll learn where there's hot spots, where stuff rubs on your neck and all that stuff. God in Greenhouse, hey, how you doing? Uh, have a good night, Dangerous Freedom. You take care. Live near Kalamazoo and use Ascension. It took 3 months for me to be able to get regular lab work done at Ascension where it was hacked. There you go. Lady Luger is just verifying what I was telling you guys. And yeah, that Ascension one was bad. And the pharmaceutical one was that was over multiple states. So that was like, they hacked some type of Blue Cross Blue Shield mainframe, and they got in there. That's funny that you mentioned it, modern. I had the exact issue happen to me. The doctor's office lost a year's worth of medical records. Yeah, that's and then too, as far as stolen identity, I had that happen a couple of times too, and that's where they stole the identity from because your medical records, whatever goes by your social security number. Now, how dumb is that? So if they hack into, no, they people don't think of as the hospital as being banks and stuff. They think, well, that's high security. He's got your financial information, but hospitals not so much. So then they get in there and they get everybody's name and social security number out of the hospital data banks. And that's happened to me too. I've gotten multiple letters like that, and I called them and asked one time, why does this stuff keep happening? They said, oh well, because hospitals are a major target of hackers. Miss Mary, glad to see you a few extra pounds compared to when you had it. Yeah, I was on a liquid diet for 6 weeks, and I was absolutely the first 2 weeks I didn't lose a lot of weight, but then after that, every time I weighed myself, I was 2 to 5 pounds lighter, and it was like that. I mean, I got down, I was like 210, maybe a little bit less than 210, and I'm normally about 250. And so I was between 40 and 50 pounds lighter than what I was during that. And it took a long time. It took me quite a while to get back now because I haven't been able to walk as much this summer, especially. I put the pounds back on, but I'm hoping that if I can get my knees fixed, I can get back out and get back to, where I was before. Uh, yeah, if they upgrade their system, your stuff is lost. Very true. Don't worry about showing up late. I'll have another one. Whatever, prepper. It's all good. Freeze your credit, everyone. Yeah, and they did that. Yeah, I had that done too, Sunset. I'm gonna tell you this. You guys are gonna get a kick out of this. I had my credit frozen, and they said, "Oh, we're gonna have this credit agency monitor your crap because you had this hack and they stole your stuff." Then that credit agency, I don't know, remember whether it was Experian or what the heck's the other one? Anyway, one of them that got hacked. So, oh, great. So the people that were supposed to monitor me got hacked, got my identity stolen again. So it's like, yeah, at that point, you're just ready to throw the towel in. It's really not hard people to get information. It's true. It is. I mean, and now it's to the point where everybody's information is out there. You had veterans stolen. You've had people that's had medical stuff stolen, and I'm sure that there has been like these big retailers and stuff like Amazon. I'm sure that there has been probes in there where they've stolen information off them, but they ain't going to be so quick to put that stuff out because that's going to hurt their business big time. And what are they going to do? Are they going to pay for credit? Is all Walmart's customers are going to pay for credit monitoring for them? Hell, that'd bankrupt the company. They wouldn't do anything like that. Tactical Muffin Top. What's up, Modern? We must all be vigilant. Building up good communities. Very true. And, participation in your community. I did a video on that. That was, I want to say it was last spring. We have several different community like meals here. Certain churches will have certain meals certain times a year. The fire departments do it. They have summer festivals. Patronize those things. Save $20, go get a couple of tickets to the Baptists hot beef sandwich dinner or whatever it is in your community. Go there, stand in line, pick your stuff up, visit with people. Even if it's not, if you're Catholic and the Lutherans are having something, or if you're Baptists and the Methodists are having something, go over to those other places. That's kind of how you build community up. And because if SHTF happens, who your group's going to be? Your neighbors, the people in your neighborhood. And this might be out in the country where your neighborhood might be 10 square miles, and it might be in a small area where it might be 3 square blocks. Your neighbors and the people that are around you, whatever that situation is, will become your group. And this is another thing too, like when bad things happen, like in well, I'm going to use this as an example. Like the elevator stops working and you're stuck in the elevator with 3 strangers. Now, those 3 strangers just became your group in that elevator to get your way out of that situation. Think of it like that. When something happens, you might not be with your group. Hell, you might be by yourself. And that's why I've always said you want to be a lone wolf in a group. You want to be able to take care of yourself. And if you can take care of yourself, when something bad happens, you're going to be an asset to any group that comes along because you're self-sufficient to a certain extent where you can take care of yourself. Hey, I can handle these problems by myself. And then when your group shows up, here comes the cavalry, and you're doing good. But there's lots of times when shit happens, you're going to be by yourself. Yeah, not the time to, and using credit is never a good idea. But sometimes, when things happen, you have a massive car repair or something like that. Sometimes people have to do that. It's it's necessary sometimes, unfortunately. Practical Rifleman, love your videos, man. Sorry I'm late, but the events of the last two stress much how we're hated. Remember the EDC. Your life depends on that's true. You never know. And you know what? Just random crime. Not even, partisan politics, whatever. Random crime where we are here, not so much out here in the country, but when you go into the cities for a hospital appointment, or you go to get, you got to get some parts or something that are in the city, and that's just the way it is. You got to go down there and get whatever that is. You're exposing yourself to an entirely different element. Uncle Bumble, hopefully you get fixed up. Definitely. Uncle Bumble is in the chat. I know everybody asks me about Uncle Bumble from time to time. So there you go, folks. You can ask Mr. Bumble what you want to ask him there in the chat. He's a good man. He's taught me bushcraft and stuff. Train. Oh yeah, train. It doesn't even if you can't afford to, if you can't afford a $3,000 class, get out there and at least familiarize yourself with your equipment and know how everything works and how it works for you, because everybody's different. And that's, I've said that too before, a new package prepper. I hate it when I see prepping channels and people go, oh, look at this brand new thing. It's brand new. Here, I'm going to show you something. You know why I know this flashlight works for me? Look at it, because I've used it. That's how I know, it's good to go, because I beat it up a little bit and I put it through its paces. And so many people think that if they just buy it and set it on a shelf, I'm good to go if something happens. That's not how it works at all. That's not how it works at all. There's been multiple times in multiple different places where I've worked where people bought something, thought they had it all set, and they set it on a shelf. A year later, they wanted to use it and something wasn't right with it. And they brought it back and they were pissed right off because their shit didn't work. Well, did you try it? Maybe you would have known that right from the get-go if you would actually got out and used your stuff. Oh, let's see here what's going on in the chat. An honest prepper never leave home without the means to survive. That's true. And like, what was it in the movie Ronin? The guy said there, the one that was played by De Niro, I never walk into a place that I don't know how to walk out of. That's good prepping advice. Once you go into a place, whatever it is, it's a building, it's a shop, whatever, never go into a place where you don't know how to get out of if something happens, especially in crazy days nowadays where people are stabbing people in Walmarts, for Pete's sakes. Oh. Hawkeye Meyer Outdoors went and subbed to the Practical Rifleman. Practical Rifleman has always got good, thought-provoking stuff. I'm a total fan of his channel. Tammy Brennan, how you doing? I-94 traffic is horrible. Yeah, and that's something that I learned too. Going back and forth into the city because and that's another thing. Preppers say, "Well, I'm never going to the city." Sometimes, for whatever reason, you might end up in the city, how quickly those roads can be shut down because of an accident, because of a storm, whatever. The cheat code to firearms competency, you can dry fire 99% of things with firearms. Yeah, too, and you can get snap caps to do that as well. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Practical Rifleman. The only thing that you can do dry is recoil control and accuracy. Yeah, a lot of stuff you can dry fire, and I mean, especially like the striker fired models are good to dry fire like that too. And basically what that is, and you can correct me, Practical Rifleman, if I'm wrong. You're building up muscle memory. You're building up muscle memory, so your body just kind of goes with the flow when the time comes, because as what is the training saying goes, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to your level of training or preparedness, whatever, however you want to put that. And and they say too, and I've seen this, I've watched different TCCC videos, and what TCCC is that's Total Combat Casualty Care. Um, when you're in a super stressful environment, like a life and death situation, or you're trying to save a loved one who's been injured really, really badly, your fine motor skills, like doing little stuff with your fingers, that degrades down to a point where you can't do fine motor things with your hands, but you can do large movements like grabbing something and pulling it, or pulling it towards you, or whatever. But if you have to manipulate something small and fine, that's out the window because of the adrenaline dump. So that's something that you have to train your way out of. And like I said, if I'm not explaining that correctly, please correct me, because like I said, I'm no professional. Oh, no problem. Don't have to be humbled in my account, Practical Rifleman. We're all doing the same thing. We all want the same thing. I don't want to. I want people to be more prepared. You know why? Because if there's more prepared people, when bad things happen, people are more self-sufficient. They can take care of themselves. And I think that should be pretty much the goal of any prepping channel, not to see how much free shit you can have sent to you. And as far as people shilling stuff and whatever, not that there ain't nothing wrong with that. This is America. That's the way it goes sometimes. But whatever happened to good old fashioned advice, the advice the old timers gave me, that kind of stuff is antiquated now, I guess. Mother Refugee says Coney B funny. MR and his whole family show knew how to start a fire with, and that's true. I was, and that was your job when you were a kid. It's like, grandma would say, go start a fire, go get the fire going in the stove. She was busy doing something else, getting coffee around or whatever, but she'd say, go start a fire. And, okay, so you went and you start a fire. I wasn't just, of course, she didn't play with matches. You didn't play with all that dangerous stuff. They were tools. They were tools, just like the 22 rifle sitting in the corner or the axe out in the woodshed. Those were tools, and you treated it as such. Modern guns and gear. I've been stressing over the last 3 years the need against knife and shitty attacks, and that's true. Look at all the stuff that's going on there in Europe. They took away people's ability to defend themselves, and now you got people attacking each other at knives. Now steak knives are illegal, or however that works over there. But that's basically how it is. Yeah, machete attacks, and that's been Great Britain. I've seen a lot of stuff like that in Great Britain. You have to have basically a reason to take a knife out in the woods, and to me, that's just. At what point does government become too much? That's a perfect example. Same way, 22 was a tool, split and maul was a tool. Yep. They weren't for messing around with. It's like the tractor. You didn't go out and screw around on the tractor. The tractor was for, doing work, doing stuff. That's, you didn't race with the tractor. Oh. And Coney B, how my kids were bought them fire stars, call good. Practice practice with stuff like Coney B. Practice with stuff like Fatwood, and get the coating off the fire starter. If you have a ferro rod, there's this black coating that's on there. You want to take that black coating off, and you want to make sure that your knife or your straight edge that you're using has a very sharp 90-degree spine, and then you can use that to start those ferro rods. A ferro rod in the right hands and right situations can really make a fast fire. And then practice with other stuff too. Practice with cotton balls and Vaseline. Practice with little pieces of Gorilla Tape, just the ends ripped off. Practice with matches. Practice with Fatwood, small things, tinder, small things like if you have pine trees in your area, small pine cones are great tinder to start a fire. And then if you shave little pieces of wood, you want small pieces, the smaller the piece. If you're striking a match and you're putting it on the fire and it's not catching, the pieces of tinder that you have are too large. You have to break them down smaller, and that's basically how you start practice, how you start learning that stuff. Yeah, they wanted Uncle Bumble, they wanted to register chef knives. So yeah, that's like I said, I wasn't too far off when I said steak knives there, but I have seen that. Journey with Nicole MR. Do you have any crossbows? And if so, do you have? I do not have a crossbow. Um, I've seen a lot of crossbows that were broke, and crossbows are not forgiving whatsoever. And I'm going to explain why. A crossbow looks like a firearm, so you shoulder it, right? But the thing of it is you have a very strong bowstring that sits on the top of that crossbow. And what has happened before, and it's happened to a lot of people, they get their thumb sticking up too high. You know, there's a deer in front of them or whatever they're hunting, and they're nervous. They quick grab the crossbow and they come up and their finger sits too high on that. And when that comes across, you have a piece of string this big. Get over here in the frame. You got a piece of string this big that's at 150 pounds, 200 pounds of draw weight. And when that thing goes and your thumb's up there, clip your thumb off, clip the end of your thumb off. And then two, crossbows, from the first time you start shooting them, they start basically destroying themselves because you have all of that power that comes forward and has to stop, comes forward and have to stop. And eventually that starts putting stress on your limbs. It starts putting stress on the crossbow itself. And then that's where you see, you know, failures in these crossbows. And I've always just had regular good luck with a regular compound bow. But the crossbows too, once you cock them and you put a bolt in there and you go to use that, now you have to decock that when you're done. So the only way to decock it is there's devices that'll do it, but the devices are basically a rope that you have to hold on to while you lower that. There'll be a foot peg. You put your foot in the foot peg and you're going to hold up on that rope and then try to, you know, actuate the trigger so you can lower that. And then there's like fake arrows that you can put in there to shoot it, to decock it, because you just can't decock a dry string. You'll explode the crossbow. So crossbows seem like a good thing, but you really got to know kind of what's going on with that. You have to have some way to decock that. You know, you have to, it has to be, and then that's decocking it the same as cocking it. You know, you have a crossbow and you have where you put your foot in it and you have to pull that up to cock it. That might be 150-pound dead weight that you have to pull up to cock that and hold that in place. So, and then two, a lot of people hunt in a tree stand. So now you got that, all that power up there in the tree stand. And now you got a cocked crossbow. You're up in the air 16 or 20 feet. Now you got to decock that to crawl down out of that tree. So it's a technical thing. I hope I'm explaining that to you good there, Journey with Nicole. But that's kind of my take on that. One of the best fire starters is cheap earplugs. That sounds like a good idea. I've never heard of that before. I took a class with Kyle Darfur. He taught me unarmed combative knife fighting. Was able to use both hands. I've seen where people did practice for knife fighting and they had like red ink or something on the fake knife, and they showed how many times that you've been, excuse me, every time you were touched with that knife would have been an injury, which was kind of a wake up call when I seen that stuff. Excalibur crossbows are king. What was the one that was a few years back that all the old timers around here were buying? Words at 10 point. I think it was 10 point. That was the one. They were thousands and thousands of dollars. They were like, well, I had some old guys tell me, "Oh, look at my new 10-point crossbow. I spent $1,700 on it." I'm like, holy mackerel, $1,700? That's crazy. But that's what they were paying for them at the time. Recurve, and you can replace your own string. Now that would be good if you had a crossbow where you could replace your own string. But gosh, I've seen so many people get hurt with crossbows, so that's kind of my thing on that. Good point on the motor skills. Yeah, and that's I think with everybody. The more I guess that you put yourself in those situations, you start to, you know, build up. I guess I don't know if you want to call it resistance to the adrenaline or whatnot, but oh, no problem. Journey with Nicole. Like I said, I don't want to discourage you from getting a crossbow, but really, really look into it. Let's see here. Monkey Food Garden, Subdog. Wish I could have been there sooner. Used to work out in the field. Oh, that's all right. Monkey Food Garden. There'll be another one. There'll be another one. In fact, this one here, I'm going to have to close down here before too long. But I wanted to get and just sort of try to get in touch with all you guys here and kind of keep my finger on the pulse of the community of what's going on, because like I said, I can see where there's really going to be more stuff being turned up in the next couple of weeks here. And unfortunately, that's the world we live in. We just got to deal with it. Good night, all. Good night, Coney. Good to see you here. Yep, Journey with Nicole. I appreciate seeing all you guys. Monkey Food Garden, Kentucky, Practical Rifleman, Modern Guns and Gear, Uncle Bumble, Hawkmeyer, Melissa. A recommendation: if you can't afford, take away of the pistol. Tactical response sounds like a good idea. All right, guys, I'm going to close this one out. I really appreciate all you guys taking some time out of your busy lives to spend it here. Justin, good to see you. Glad you stopped by. I just appreciate everybody stopping by and kind of giving their opinion on what's been going on this week here. This is how we stay in touch and we stay together and we share information. Appreciate each and every one of you guys out there. You guys take care.